The rain poured down in relentless sheets, soaking through my worn-out coat and into my very bones. I stood there, clutching my son tightly against my chest, feeling the cold seep into every inch of my body. My trembling hands barely managed to keep the small blanket wrapped around his fragile frame. His tiny whimpers were barely audible over the roar of the storm, but I could feel his body shaking against mine. I had nowhere to go. I had nothing left. The echoes of his words still rang in my ears, cutting deeper than any blade ever could. I can't do this anymore, Joshua. You're holding me back. This isn't the life I wanted. And just like that, he was gone. No hesitation, no second thoughts. Just an umbrella snapping open, his back turning to me, and his footsteps fading into the storm. I should have seen it coming. The distant looks, the late nights at work, the way he stopped touching me, stopped caring. But a part of me, the foolish, naive Omega that still believed in love, had clung to hope until the very last second. Now that hope was gone, washed away by the rain, my son stirred against me, his small face pressing into my neck, seeking warmth and comfort I was struggling to provide. His soft curls were damp, and I kissed his head, whispering reassurances I didn't quite believe myself. It's okay. Baby, we'll be okay. The words felt hollow even to me. I forced my feet to move, stepping out from under the building's awning into the storm. Each step felt heavier than the last, as if the weight of my failure was dragging me down. My clothes clung to me like a second skin, my boots splashing through puddles that threatened to swallow us whole. We needed shelter. We needed food. We needed hope. A flickering neon sign caught my eye, a 24-hour diner. It wasn't much, but it was something. I pushed the door open, and a bell chimed above my head, announcing my presence to the few people inside. The warmth hit me instantly, a stark contrast to the bitter cold outside, but I still felt frozen inside. The waitress, a woman with kind eyes and a tired smile, glanced up from wiping the counter. She took one look at me, soaked, exhausted, and clutching a crying child, and her expression softened. "Sit anywhere you like, honey," she said gently. I nodded, swallowing down the lump in my throat, and found a booth in the corner. As I settled in, my son curled into me, his little fingers gripping my shirt tightly. I whispered soft words to him, rocking him gently, and finally, his breathing steadied. The waitress returned moments later with a steaming cup of coffee and a bowl of soup. "It's on the house," she said, giving me a look that said she understood more than she let on. I wanted to cry, but I couldn't. Not here. Not now. Instead, I whispered a quiet, "Thank you," and took a slow sip of the coffee. It was too hot, but I didn't care. The warmth burned down my throat, filling the emptiness inside me just a little. As I gazed out the window, watching the rain continue to fall, I realized something. This was our rock bottom. But I wouldn't stay here forever. I had a son to take care of. I had to be strong for him, even if I felt like breaking apart. No matter how much it hurt, I had to keep going. And with that thought in mind, I picked up the spoon and took the first bite of soup, letting the warmth spread through me. One step at a time. A week had passed since that night in the diner. Life hadn't gotten any easier, but I'd found a little rhythm in the chaos. My son, Leo, was safe at a small daycare near our new apartment. A cramped one-bedroom place that barely had enough space for us, but at least it had a roof that didn't leak. I'd managed to land a job at Glentech, a well-known marketing firm, as an administrative assistant. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid the bills, and that was all that mattered. Today was my first day. As I stood in front of the towering glass building, I adjusted my tie, which felt too tight around my neck. My fingers were cold. My nerves rattled. My reflection in the glass doors showed a tired-looking Omega, dark circles under my eyes and lips pressed into a thin line. "You can do this, Joshua," I whispered to myself before stepping inside. The lobby was grand. High ceilings, marble floors, and busy employees bustling past with expensive suits and purposeful strides. I felt like an imposter in my second-hand blazer, but I kept my head high and approached the reception desk. "I'm here for my first day. Joshua Wells," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. The receptionist, a beta with a polite smile, typed something into the computer and nodded. "Welcome, Mr. Wells. Your supervisor, Mr. Evan Carter, is expecting you. You'll find him on the 15th floor." She handed me a visitor badge and gestured toward the elevator bank. My heart pounded as I stepped inside the elevator. I'd read about Evan Carter, the youngest department head in the company, rumored to be an alpha with a sharp mind and an even sharper tongue. I didn't know what to expect, but I knew I had to keep my head down and do my job. There was no room for mistakes. The elevator dinged, and I stepped out onto the sleek, modern floor. Glass offices lined the walls, and people moved quickly, absorbed in their tasks. I approached the large corner office, knocking hesitantly before stepping inside. And then I saw him, Evan Carter. He was seated at his desk, flipping through files with a focused expression. The first thing I noticed was how tall he was, even seated. His presence filled the room effortlessly, his black hair neatly styled, and piercing blue eyes that locked onto mine the moment I entered. For a moment, I forgot how to breathe. Joshua Wells? His deep voice cut through my thoughts, and I straightened up immediately. Yes, sir, I answered quickly, trying to keep my voice from trembling. He studied me for a moment, his gaze sharp and assessing. You're early. I like that, he said simply, gesturing to the chair across from him. Take a seat. I sat down, swallowing nervously. The room was silent for a moment, except for the faint hum of the city outside. Evan flipped through my resume, his expression unreadable. Your qualifications are impressive, he said finally, looking up. But what I care about most is reliability. I don't tolerate mistakes, Mr. Wells. Think you can handle that? Yes, sir. I won't let you down, I replied, my hands clenched tightly on my lap. He leaned back in his chair, regarding me with a calculating look. We'll see. His tone wasn't harsh, but it held a weight that made my stomach twist. Your main responsibilities will include organizing reports, scheduling meetings, and ensuring everything runs smoothly in this department. Can you manage that? Yes, I can, I said, trying to sound more confident than I felt. Evan nodded, apparently satisfied, and handed me a thick stack of files. Good. Start by familiarizing yourself with these. I need a summary by the end of the day. I took the files with slightly shaking hands and nodded. Understood. As I stood to leave, Evan spoke again, his voice softer but still firm. And Joshua? I turned back to him, surprised he used my first name. You don't need to be nervous. Just do your job well, and we'll get along fine. His lips quirked up slightly, almost like a smile, but it was gone in an instant. I left his office, clutching the files to my chest, exhaling shakily. Something about him made me feel both intimidated and something else I couldn't quite name. The day passed in a blur of paperwork, phone calls, and frantic typing. By lunchtime, I was exhausted but determined. I sat in the break room, eating a cold sandwich while flipping through the reports Evan had given me. New guy? Huh. A cheerful voice cut through the quiet. I looked up to see a beta woman with short, red hair and a friendly smile. She sat across from me, placing her tray down. I'm Mia, HR. And you're Joshua, right? Yeah, I said with a small smile. Nice to meet you. She grinned. You're working under Evan? Good luck with that. He's a tough one. I chuckled nervously. Yeah, I noticed. But he's not as bad as he seems, Mia continued. A bit intense, sure, but he takes care of his people. If you can keep up, you'll do fine. I nodded, grateful for the reassurance. Thanks. I'll do my best. Mia winked. That's the spirit. By the end of the day, I had compiled the summaries and nervously approached Evan's office. He was still there, typing away on his laptop. I hesitated at the door before stepping inside and placing the neatly arranged files on his desk. He glanced up, scanning through the papers. I held my breath, waiting for some sign of approval. Finally, he nodded. Not bad for your first day. Relief flooded through me. Thank you, sir. He looked at me again, this time his expression softer. Joshua, you can call me Evan. No need to be so formal all the time. I blinked, surprised. Oh, okay. Evan, good. He leaned back in his chair, stretching slightly. Go home. Get some rest. Tomorrow's another long day. I nodded and left, feeling something strange settle in my chest. A mix of exhaustion, relief, and curiosity. Evan Carter was nothing like I expected. As I walked out of the building, my phone buzzed. I glanced down to see a picture from Leo's daycare, him holding a crayon drawing of us. My heart swelled, and for the first time in a long while, I felt like maybe things were going to be okay. Maybe. Mornings were always chaotic. Between getting Leo dressed, making sure he had his favorite stuffed dinosaur in his backpack, and convincing him that, yes, cereal was a perfectly acceptable breakfast, I barely had time to breathe. Today was no different. Daddy, where's Rexy? Leo's little voice rang out as he ran around the small apartment, his curly brown hair a mess from sleep. I sighed, balancing a piece of toast between my teeth while fixing his shoelaces. I think Rexy's on the couch. Bud, go grab him, and let's go before we're late. Leo rushed off and I took a moment to glance at the clock. 15 minutes until I had to be at work. Just enough time to drop him off at daycare and sprint to the office. As usual, we were cutting it close. Once Leo was safely dropped off with a kiss on the forehead and a promise to pick him up on time, I rushed to Glentech. The elevator ride-up felt longer than usual today, and I found myself feeling strangely nervous. Evan Carter. Just thinking about his name sent a strange shiver down my spine. He wasn't the harsh, cold alpha I'd expected. He was focused and demanding, yes, but there was something about him, something steady and reliable, that made me feel safe. The doors opened, and I stepped into the office, only to freeze at the sight in front of me. Evan stood by his desk, sleeves rolled up, revealing toned forearms as he held a coffee cup in one hand and a stack of papers in the other. His gaze lifted when he heard me come in, and a small smirk touched his lips. "You're 5 minutes early," he said, his voice rich and smooth. "Impressive." I swallowed, hurrying to my desk. "I try my best." "Good." He walked over, placing a steaming cup of coffee in front of me. "You'll need this." I blinked, staring at the cup in confusion. "Is this for me?" He shrugged. "You looked half dead yesterday. Consider it a welcome gift." I couldn't help but smile, a small warmth blooming in my chest. "Thank you. I really appreciate it." Evan nodded, leaning against my desk casually. "So, how are you settling in? Is the workload too much?" I shook my head quickly. "No, it's fine. I mean, it's a lot, but I can handle it." He studied me for a moment, his gaze unreadable. "Good. Just let me know if you need anything." It was such a simple statement, yet it hit me harder than I expected. I wasn't used to someone looking out for me. Not anymore. As the day passed, I found myself growing more comfortable in the office. Mia occasionally popped by to check in, and the workload, while demanding, was manageable. What surprised me most, however, was how often Evan's gaze would linger on me when he thought I wasn't looking. It wasn't in a predatory way, no, it was more observant, like he was trying to figure me out. Lunchtime rolled around, and I retreated to the break room again. I was halfway through my sandwich when Evan walked in, holding his phone to his ear, his tone sharp and commanding. His presence filled the small space instantly, and I found myself shrinking into my seat. "Yes, I need that report by 5, Evan said, his voice unwavering. "No excuses." He ended the call and looked down at me, raising an eyebrow. "Mind if I join you?" I nearly choked on my bite. Sure." Evan sat down, loosening his tie slightly. For a few minutes, neither of us spoke. The silence wasn't uncomfortable, but I could feel his eyes on me every now and then. "You mentioned having a kid," he said suddenly, and I nearly dropped my sandwich. I swallowed nervously. Yeah, my son, Leo. He's 5. Evan nodded thoughtfully. "That's impressive. It must be tough raising him on your own." I gave a small, awkward laugh. "Yeah, it's not easy, but he's my whole world. I'd do anything for him." Something flickered in Evan's eyes, something almost like admiration. "That takes a lot of strength, Joshua." I stared at him, surprised by his words. Most people looked at me with pity or judgment, but Evan's gaze held neither. Felt genuine. "Thanks," I said softly. As the days went by, my relationship with Evan shifted in small but significant ways. He'd check in on me more often, offering advice or support without being overbearing. There were moments, fleeting but meaningful, where I caught glimpses of something softer beneath his composed exterior. One evening, as I was finishing up work, my phone buzzed with a message from Leo's daycare. "Leo has a fever. Please pick him up as soon as possible." Panic flooded me instantly. I grabbed my bag, heart pounding in my chest. "Leaving early?" Evan's voice stopped me at the door. I turned, trying to stay calm. "Yeah, my son is sick. I have to go pick him up." Evan studied me for a moment before nodding. "Go. Family comes first." The simple understanding in his tone made my throat tighten. "Thank you," I whispered before rushing out. That night, I sat by Leo's bedside, wiping his forehead with a damp cloth as he mumbled sleepily. His fever had gone down slightly, but I still felt anxious. I hated seeing him like this, so small and vulnerable. A knock at the door startled me. I frowned, getting up cautiously. When I opened it, my heart nearly stopped. Evan stood there, holding a small bag in one hand and a worried expression on his face. I picked up some medicine and soup." Mia mentioned where you lived. I stared at him, completely thrown off. You didn't have to. I wanted to, he said simply. I swallowed hard, stepping aside to let him in. He placed the bag on the table and glanced toward Leo's sleeping figure. His gaze softened in a way I'd never seen before. Is he okay? Evan asked quietly. I nodded, my throat tight. Yeah. Thanks to you. For the first time in a long while, I didn't feel alone. And for once, I let myself lean into that feeling, even if just for a moment. The morning after Leo's fever broke, I found myself sitting on the edge of my bed, staring blankly at the floor. The apartment was silent except for the soft hum of the heater. Leo was still sleeping soundly, curled up under the blankets, his little face peaceful and serene. I should have felt relieved, but instead, a heavy weight pressed down on my chest. Evan's unexpected kindness last night lingered in my mind. The way he'd stood at my doorstep, looking almost uncertain, the way he'd quietly left after making sure we were okay. It was all too much. I wasn't used to people like him, people who cared. The sound of my phone buzzing on the nightstand jolted me out of my thoughts. I reached for it, expecting a message from daycare or work, but my heart dropped when I saw the name flashing on the screen. Daniel. I froze. My fingers hovered over the screen, and for a moment, I debated whether to answer. My stomach churned with unease, memories threatening to resurface. Before I could decide, the call ended, and a new message appeared. We need to talk. It's about Leo. My breath caught in my throat. Daniel, my former alpha, Leo's biological father. The man who had walked away from us without looking back. And now, after all this time, he wanted to talk? I clenched my jaw, fingers tightening around the phone. Part of me wanted to ignore it, to pretend he didn't exist, but another part, the part that still hurt, knew I couldn't avoid him forever. I had to protect Leo no matter what. At work, I found it hard to focus. My hands shook slightly as I sorted through files, and my mind kept drifting back to the message. Joshua. I jumped slightly at the sound of Evan's voice. He stood by my desk, his usual composed expression tinged with concern. You okay? You seem distracted. I swallowed hard and forced a small smile. Yeah, just a rough night. Leo was sick. Evan's eyes softened. He's better now? Yeah. Thanks to you, I said quietly, offering a genuine smile this time. Evan nodded, his gaze lingering for a moment longer than necessary. Good. But if you need time off, just say the word. I'll be fine, I assured him, though deep down, I wasn't sure if I was. He hesitated as if wanting to say more, but simply nodded and walked away. Later that afternoon, I found myself standing outside the cafe Daniel had suggested. My heart pounded in my chest as I pushed open the door, stepping inside the warm, coffee-scented space. And there he was. Daniel looked almost the same. Tall, confident, with the same piercing gray eyes that had once made me feel safe. But now all I felt was a dull ache. He smiled when he saw me, standing to pull out a chair. Joshua. I sat down stiffly, crossing my arms over my chest. What do you want, Daniel? He sighed, running a hand through his perfectly styled hair. I know I messed up. Okay? I know I left, and I regret it every day. I scoffed. Funny, you didn't seem to regret it when you walked out that door. Daniel flinched but pressed on. I've been thinking a lot about Leo. I want to see him. My entire body went rigid. No, Josh, please. No, Daniel. My voice rose slightly, drawing a few curious glances from nearby patrons. I lowered my voice, gripping the edge of the table. You don't get to walk back in and act like you care now. You left us. You left him. I made a mistake, he said, his voice pleading. I was scared, and I wasn't ready to be a father. But I want to try now. I shook my head, my heart pounding. It's too late for that. Leo doesn't even know who you are. I've been the one raising him, not you. Daniel looked down, his face a mix of guilt and regret. I want to make things right. Then leave us alone, I said firmly. We've moved on. Silence stretched between us, heavy and suffocating. After what felt like an eternity, Daniel nodded slowly, his eyes clouded with something I couldn't quite place. Okay, he said quietly, but if you ever change your mind, I'll be here. I didn't respond. I just stood up and walked out of the cafe, the cold air biting at my skin. My hands shook as I pulled my coat tighter around me, my chest aching. That night, I sat on the couch with Leo curled up next to me, his tiny hand resting on my arm as he slept. I brushed his hair back gently, my heart swelling with love and protectiveness. I didn't need Daniel. Leo and I had made it this far on our own, and we would keep going. But as much as I wanted to shut the door on the past, a small, nagging voice in the back of my mind whispered doubts. Would Leo resent me one day for keeping his father away? Was I really doing the right thing? A soft knock at the door pulled me from my thoughts. I got up, expecting it to be a neighbor, but when I opened it, Evan stood there, his expression unreadable. Hey, he said softly. I just wanted to check on you. You seemed off today. I swallowed, my throat tight with emotion. Yeah, it's been a rough day. Evan nodded, stepping inside without hesitation. Want to talk about it? I hesitated for a moment before nodding slowly. Yeah, I think I do. As I closed the door behind him, I realized something. I wasn't as alone as I thought. And maybe, just maybe, I didn't have to carry this burden by myself anymore. Evan sat on my couch, his sharp blue eyes scanning me with a quiet patience that made my chest tighten. I had never been good at opening up to people, especially not to alphas, but something about him made me want to try. The weight of Daniel's unexpected return and the burden of raising Leo alone pressed heavily on my shoulders. And for once, I didn't want to carry it by myself. I took a deep breath, settling into the armchair across from him. It's complicated, I started, my voice quieter than I intended. Leo's father came back. Out of nowhere, Evan's brows furrowed slightly, but he said nothing, letting me continue. He left us when Leo was just a baby. I continued, staring down at my hands. Said he wasn't ready to be a father. And now, years later, he suddenly wants to be involved. Evan leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. And how do you feel about that? I let out a humorless laugh. I don't know. Angry, confused, a little scared, I guess. What if one day Leo wants to know him? What if I'm making the wrong choice by keeping him away? Evan's gaze softened, and for a moment, I thought I saw something deeper, something more personal flicker across his face. Joshua, you've been doing this on your own for so long. It's natural to worry, but you need to trust yourself. You know what's best for Leo. I looked up at him, surprised by the unwavering certainty in his voice. You think so? He nodded without hesitation. Absolutely. And you're not alone. You have people who care about you, about both of you. The warmth in his words was something I hadn't felt in a long time, and I swallowed hard, trying to fight the emotions rising in my chest. Thank you, Evan. Really? He smiled, and it wasn't the usual smirk or polite expression he wore at work. It was genuine. Anytime. The next few days passed in a blur of work, daycare runs, and restless nights spent overthinking. Daniel hadn't reached out again, but his presence lingered in the back of my mind like an unwelcome shadow. Evan, on the other hand, had been present. He didn't push or pry, but he checked in often, offering small gestures of support that meant more to me than I could admit. A cup of coffee placed on my desk without a word. A nod of understanding when I looked exhausted. Quiet, you're doing great, when I needed it most. One evening, as I was picking Leo up from daycare, I heard his excited voice calling out, Evan! My heart skipped a beat as I turned to see Evan standing near the entrance, holding a small stuffed bear in one hand. Leo rushed to him without hesitation, and Evan crouched down to meet him with an easy smile. Hey, buddy, Evan said, ruffling Leo's hair. Thought you could use a new friend. Leo's eyes lit up as he took the bear, hugging it tightly. Thank you. I stood there, speechless, watching the scene unfold. Evan looked up at me with a sheepish expression. I hope you don't mind. Mia mentioned he liked stuffed animals. I blinked, feeling my chest tighten. You didn't have to do that, I said softly, though I couldn't stop the small smile from forming. Evan shrugged. I wanted to. Leo tugged on my hand, beaming. Can we have dinner with Evan, Daddy? Please. I hesitated, looking between my son and the man standing in front of us. Evan raised an eyebrow, as if leaving the decision up to me. And for once, I let myself take a chance. Sure, let's go. Dinner was surprisingly easy. We found a small diner nearby, and Leo chattered happily the entire time, showing Evan his drawings and telling him all about his favorite cartoons. I watched, half in awe, as Evan listened intently, responding with genuine interest. I'd never seen Leo take to someone so quickly, and what was more surprising was how natural it felt. As we walked back home, Leo holding Evan's hand tightly, I realized something unsettling. I was starting to trust him, and that terrified me. Later that night, after putting Leo to bed, I stood in the living room, feeling restless. The weight of everything, the past, the future, the unknown, pressed down on me, and I found myself dialing Evan's number before I could stop myself. "Hey," his voice came through the line, warm and steady. I hesitated, feeling foolish. "I just wanted to say thanks. For today. For everything." "You don't have to thank me, Joshua," he said softly. "I meant what I said. You're not alone." I closed my eyes, letting his words settle over me like a blanket. It's just hard. Letting someone in. There was a brief pause before Evan spoke again. "I get it, but you don't have to rush. I'll be here." And for the first time in a long time, I believed him. The following week, I found myself at a crossroads. Daniel had called again, leaving another message. This time more desperate, more pleading. I sat in my office, staring at my phone, torn between the life I had built and the ghosts of my past. Evan knocked on the doorframe, breaking me out of my thoughts. "Hey, you okay?" I hesitated before nodding. "Yeah, just thinking." He stepped inside, closing the door behind him. "Want to talk about it?" I exhaled shakily. Daniel called again. Evan's jaw tightened slightly, but he kept his voice calm. And I don't know what to do," I admitted, my voice breaking slightly. Part of me wants to shut him out completely, but another part wonders if Leo deserves to know him. Evan studied me for a long moment before speaking. "Look, I can't tell you what to do, but I can tell you this: whatever choice you make, it has to be for you and Leo, not for him." His words hit me harder than I expected. I nodded slowly, the weight in my chest feeling just a little lighter. "Thanks, Evan." He reached out, squeezing my shoulder briefly. "Anytime." And in that moment I knew I had already made my decision. I wasn't looking back anymore. The decision weighed heavily on me for days. Daniel's calls became more frequent, each voicemail filled with apologies and desperate pleas. But every time I looked at Leo, at his bright eyes and carefree smile, I knew what my answer had to be. Leo didn't need a father who walked away. He needed someone who stayed. And that person wasn't Daniel. I found myself standing outside Evan's office late one evening, the office floor nearly empty. The soft glow of his desk lamp illuminated his focused expression as he typed away at his computer. He must have sensed me because his eyes lifted, locking onto mine with quiet curiosity. "Joshua," he said, his voice gentle yet firm. "You all right?" I swallowed the lump in my throat and stepped inside, shutting the door behind me. "I think I finally made my decision," I said, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside. Evan leaned back in his chair, watching me carefully. "And I'm not letting Daniel back into our lives," I said with a certainty I hadn't felt before. "He had his chance. I won't let him come back just to hurt Leo again." Evan's expression softened, and for a moment, I thought I saw a flicker of relief in his eyes. "Good," he said simply. "You're making the right choice." I let out a shaky breath, a weight lifting off my chest. "I hope so." "You are," he reassured me, his voice steady and warm. "You're doing what's best for Leo. And yourself." I looked at him, really looked at him, and for the first time I realized just how much he'd become a part of our lives. How much his presence had anchored me, offering support in ways I never expected. The thought scared me, but it also gave me hope. "Thank you," I said softly, and this time, I meant it in more ways than one. That weekend, Leo and I found ourselves at the park. The autumn air was crisp, and the leaves crunched beneath our feet as we walked along the winding paths. Leo ran ahead, laughing as he kicked at the piles of fallen leaves, his cheeks flushed pink from the cool breeze. I sat on a bench, watching him play, when Evan appeared beside me, holding 2 cups of hot chocolate. He handed me one without a word, sitting down with an easy grace that somehow put me at ease. "You didn't have to come," I said, taking a sip and letting the warmth seep through me. Evan shrugged. "I wanted to." We sat in comfortable silence, watching Leo chase after a group of kids, his laughter filling the air. After a while, Evan spoke again, his voice quieter this time. "You know, you're an incredible father." I looked at him, caught off guard by the sincerity in his voice. "I don't always feel like it," I admitted. Evan turned to face me fully, his gaze unwavering. "You are. And you don't have to do it alone, Joshua." Something about the way he said it, the quiet conviction behind his words, made my chest tighten. "Evan?" He reached out then, his hand covering mine where it rested on the bench. The warmth of his touch was steady, grounding. "I mean it," he said, his eyes searching mine. I'm here. If you'll let me be. I swallowed hard, my heart pounding in my chest. Letting someone in had never been easy for me. But sitting there, with Evan's hand over mine and Leo's laughter in the air, I realized something. I wanted this. I wanted him. I started, my voice shaky but sure. I think I'd like that. Evan's lips curved into the softest smile I'd ever seen, and he gave my hand a gentle squeeze. Good, because I'm not going anywhere. Over the next few weeks, Evan became a more permanent presence in our lives. He'd join us for dinner, help Leo with his homework, and even show up at daycare pickups when I was running late. The way he fit into our lives so effortlessly both amazed and terrified me. But every fear, every doubt I had, melted away when I saw how much Leo adored him. "Daddy, look!" Leo shouted one evening as he proudly showed Evan a drawing he'd made. It was a picture of the three of us. Leo, me, and Evan, holding hands under a big, bright sun. My heart clenched at the sight, and I glanced at Evan, who was smiling at the drawing like it was the most important thing in the world. "You drew this all by yourself?" Evan asked, genuinely impressed. Leo nodded eagerly. "Yep, 'cause you're family now, right?" Evan looked at me then, his expression unreadable, but his eyes were full of something I couldn't quite name. Something warm and steady. "Yeah, buddy," he said softly, ruffling Leo's hair. Family. One evening, after putting Leo to bed, Evan and I stood by the window, looking out at the city lights. The quiet between us was comfortable, but there was an unspoken conversation hanging in the air. "You really meant it, didn't you?" I finally asked, turning to face him. Evan met my gaze without hesitation. "Every word," he said, his voice steady. "I'm all in, Joshua. If you'll have me." For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I had to guard my heart so fiercely. I took a step closer, reaching for his hand, and when our fingers intertwined, it felt right. "I want to try," I said softly. "With you." Evan's smile was gentle, but the way he looked at me, like I was something worth holding on to, made my heart race. "Then we'll figure it out. Together." I leaned into him, resting my head against his shoulder, and for the first time in years, I felt at peace. Months passed, and our little family settled into a rhythm that felt natural. Evan was there for every milestone, Leo's school events, bedtime stories, and Sunday morning pancake breakfasts. One evening, as we sat on the couch watching a movie, Leo nestled between us, I realized something profound. I was happy. I looked over at Evan, who caught my gaze and smiled, his hand finding mine effortlessly. Home wasn't just a place. It was the people who stayed. And in that moment, I knew I had finally found mine. Thank you for watching till the end. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell. See you again in the next video.